Hey everyone, welcome back to Wix Fix. I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Ryan, and today's video is another episode of our e-commerce mini-series. Now, for the first video of this part in the series, I showed you guys how to design your custom product page. However, I am not very good at code, so we're bringing on Eitan from the WixWiz YouTube channel. Of course, I'm going to leave the link to his channel in the description below. I really ask that you guys go subscribe to his channel. He is a fellow genius. But Eitan is going to be here for the next several episodes in this series to help bring that design that I made to life. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the baton over to Eitan, and he's going to show you how it's done.
Okay, so the next thing that we're going to hop into is our product options. And here things get a little more complicated, but don't worry, I'm here with you. And the reason is that we don't necessarily know how many options this product is going to have, and we might also want to display our options in different creative ways depending on what those options are. And that is why over here, inside of this design, what we have is this drop down inside of a repeater. And essentially what we're going to do is we are going to populate this repeater based on the amount of options that we have, so that if we have, let's say, 2 options, then we'll have 2 drop-downs, and if we have 3 options, then we'll have 3 drop-downs. And in addition to that, we'll also be demonstrating how to, for example, display one of your options in a slightly different way, for example, using selection tags for size. So in order to facilitate this, we set up a product that has several options for demonstration. If your product only has 1 option, then obviously you'll only see 1 drop down here in the repeater. So let's hop into our code and see how we are going to facilitate these drop downs. Okay, so before we hop in and start coding, let's first do a little refresher about the data structure. So here, if you remember on the bottom, I have an example of what a product object would look like. And you can see here that we have one property that's called product options, and that's what we're going to be playing around with today. And it's an object, which is going to be a little challenging for us as we translate that into a repeater, but we'll get to that later on. And it has properties, and each one of these properties is essentially one of the options. So here you can see there's an option size, and here there's an option sent. And within each one of these options, we also have the choices, which is essentially what the user can choose from our dropdown regarding the product. And we have some kind of metadata about each one of these choices. And for example, here we have the description and the value, which is going to help us populate that dropdown. And we also have, for example, main media, which allows us to change, let's say, the main media based on this specific option if it has its own unique main media. And these are all things that you would set up inside of the product dashboard. So now that we have a kind of a general understanding of how this data is structured, let's head back up here to the top of our code. And I'm going to go ahead and create a new function that is going to be used for populating our options. Okay, so let's start by declaring our function that will populate our options. So I'm just going to go and say function populate options. And for the moment, we're going to focus on the repeater, and then later on we'll talk about how to do the size selection tags. So in order to populate our repeater with data, we're going to have to transform between the product options in the object format to the product options in an array format. And the way we're going to do that is, first of all, let's grab our product. So I'm going to put that right over there. And then let's extract from that our product options. And then we're going to use equals to product. And then what we're going to do is we are going to use something called object.keys to get the specific keys of our object in an array format. So I'm going to say const option keys equals 2, and then we're going to say object dot keys, and we're going to pass in product options. So this should give us back an array which has something like size and sent, assuming that those are our options. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to map from that array into an array of the actual objects for each option. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say const options equals 2, and then I'm going to say option keys dot map, and for each option we're going to essentially return the product options and the actual option. Okay, so it should go ahead and let me just show you what I did over here. So it should go ahead and select from the product options the option that matches this specific key. Okay, and I'm going to add in here a console log, console.log, options, and options. And let's take a look and see what that data looks like, just so you can get a better idea of what I've done so far. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom out, and let's head over here into our editor, and I'm going to go into preview mode. Let's open up the developer console here. And of course, as usual, I forgot to run the function. So let me just add that right over here. I'm going to add that, populate options. Okay, don't forget to run your functions and pop in right back into the editor, edit site, preview mode. And now hopefully we should be able to see that console log that I put in there. So let's go into our developer tools, developer console, and here you can see those options, and you can see that there's an array of 2 options. So the first one here is size, and the second one here is sent. And essentially we have 3 choices here, and these are the choices that we're going to be using for our dropdown. Okay, so let's go ahead and start to set up the on item ready for our repeater. Okay, so let me hop back into this function, and I'm going to zoom right in, and I'm going to start off by selecting our repeater, which is called the dropdown options repeater. And I'm going to set up the on item ready, and we're going to have our $item and our item data. And what we're going to be doing here is selecting our individual dropdowns and setting them up based on the data that we're passing in, which is essentially our options data. So let's start off by setting the label, because that's easy. So I'm going to select one of our dropdowns, and let's say dropdown option, I think I called it, or maybe option dropdown. Let's see, option dropdown. There we go. And I'm going to say dot label, and that should be equal to item data dot name. Okay, which, if you recall, let's go back down here to our data. So we see here that for each option we have a name. So then our label should be that name, which in this case would be size and sent. Okay, and the next thing we want to do is also set up the options for that dropdown, and for that we're going to need to do a little manipulation. So let's go ahead and set up those options. So the options are essentially going to be our choices. So let's say that, let me zoom back in here, item options dropdown, option dropdown dot options. Sorry for all the use of options here. That's mostly Wix's naming. So options equals to item data dot choices. And now we're going to have to map those choices into a format that our dropdown can understand. And that means that for each one of these choices, let's say choice, what we're going to do is we're going to essentially return an object, which is going to have a label, and it's going to have a value. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set both of these to be the description of this specific choice. So it's going to be choice.description. And here as well, it's going to be choice.description. Description. Awesome. Why am I getting this error here? Because this needs to be inside of parentheses. There we go. Okay, let me go ahead and format. Awesome. So we've set up the options. And the last thing that we need to do essentially for this repeater to work is to actually pass the data in. So let's do that here under the onReady. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that the dropdown options repeater data equals 2. And essentially what we're going to say here is that it's equal to our options, but we're going to need to do a little manipulation because when we pass, if you recall, I think we touched on this probably in one of the previous episodes of this tutorial, but when we pass data to a repeater, it needs to have a unique ID that's a string. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say options.map, and for each option, I'm going to pass in not only the option itself, so that's going to be the option, but we're also going to add an additional field over here that is the ID, and this ID is going to be equal to, let's say, option.name. Okay, you can also choose to generate kind of a unique random ID or something like that. Just make sure that it's a string and then it's in a format that Wix accepts for repeater IDs. Okay, so this should be enough to get our repeater populated, or at least to incur an interesting error that we can debug. So let me head back over to our editor and let's go into preview mode. And you can see here, okay, so we have essentially 2 option dropdowns now inside the repeater, and the labels are populated accordingly. So here's size and cent. And if I click one of these, then you can see here all of our different options. So we have 12 Oz, 6 Oz, etc. And here we have the different cents that we can choose from. And if we had more options, then we'd see all of those here in the repeater. You can see that the design got kind of a little squashed as we did this. So after seeing what your design looks like, you might want to like alter it a little bit, but that's Ryan's job. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to focus on design right now, but that is an example of how to take your product options and use them to populate dropdowns in a repeater. So now what we're going to do is we are going to set up these selection tags for the size option. And in order to do that, we are going to conditionally display these selection tags with the sizes if there is a size option for this product. And we're also going to be removing it from the options that are used in the dropdowns because we don't want to display the same option twice. And in order to facilitate this, I'm just going to need to collapse these selection tags by default. So let me go over here on the bottom to the IDE, and then right over here we can just go ahead and hit collapsed. And what we're going to do is we're going to expand them in our code if there is indeed a size option in this specific product. So let's head over to our IDE, and we're going to be implementing this code right before we populate the drop-down options repeater. And the reason I'm doing it before is because if we conditionally remove sizes from the repeaters, we only want to populate the repeaters after that. Okay, so if we did this too late inside of our function, then it wouldn't apply to the actual data in the repeaters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be adding in a condition, and I'm going to say that if the option keys dot includes size, then we're going to run the following code. So for a product that doesn't have size, this is not going to run. And you also have to be careful about what the naming of the actual options are. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to extract the size option into its own variable. So I'm going to say const size option. And I'm going to say that this equals to product options size. Okay, so now I have a variable that's just the size option. The next thing I want to do is I want to filter down our options over here, and I want to display only the options that are not size. So let's set up a filter. So I'm going to say that options equals to options dot filter. And essentially I'm going to filter out the option where the option dot name is not equal to size. Okay, so now these options will only contain options where the name is not equal to size. So essentially size is going to be out. And that should deal with those options. And the last thing will be to set up the actual selection tags. So let's select the selection tags. Options, selection tags, I think I called it. And we're going to set up the options. And it's essentially going to be very similar to what we did here for the options dropdown. The only difference is that instead of item data over here, we are going to have the size option. Okay, so size option, and then we're going to say choices dot map, and then we're going to say that for each choice, we're essentially going to have this object over here, which is going to have label and value. And this label is going to be the choice dot description. And the value is also going to be choice dot description. Awesome. And let's see why I'm getting the same error that I got before. I can't learn. This needs to be in parentheses. Awesome. And the last thing that we're going to be doing is we're going to expand our selection tags. So options, selection tags dot expand. Okay. And I think that this should do the trick. Let's give it a format there, and I'm going to zoom out, and let's head back into our editor. And I'm going to head into preview mode. And let's see what happens here for this product. Awesome. So we see here now that only sent, we see here now that only sent can be seen here in the dropdowns, and we still have the sent options. But for the for the size options, we have these selection tags essentially. Okay, so that's what we see over here. And if, for example, I go to a product which does not have selection tags, which I think, let's say, would be this product. So let me go in here. Yeah, so you can see here that, for example, this product doesn't have any options at all. So it's also not showing our repeater because no data was passed into it. And it's also, of course, not showing our selection tags. Let's see if we have an example. I think this product might only have, let me take a look. Yeah, so this product, let's say, only has our options. That's product 1 lotion. So let me take a look at that one. Product 1 lotion. Why don't I see this product 1 lotion? Maybe it's just this scented lotion. Let's see. Okay. I think it was just called, for some reason, the URL is scented lotion, even though it's called product 1. But here you can see essentially that we have the options dropdown, but not the selection tags because we don't actually have size. And this is actually a great example of why it's important to have different test cases if you have different kinds of products. So make sure that you test your code and test your custom product page with at least each product type to make sure that you're covering all your bases. And that's going to wrap up options for today. There's still more that we can do in terms of options with regard to actually adding the product to our cart. There are also some slightly more advanced things that we can do, such as I mentioned, changing the media and maybe even changing the price based on the variant, but that's going to be in another episode.
But that's basically gonna wrap it up for today's video. If you all did enjoy, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel for more Wix and Wix Studio content coming out really soon. Again, I want to give a special shout out to Eitan from the Wix Wiz YouTube channel. This series would not be possible without him, so I'm really appreciative for him. But thank you again for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Peace.